All right, thank you. Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, good morning.
Today we'll be looking at JavaScript and if statement, conditional statement. Okay, so conditional statements, it's just simple like what you know already about conditional statement. Let me say you're going to a shop to buy something, and then you have, let's say, 100 naira with you, and you want to buy orange for 50 naira or for 100 naira. And then when you get there, you have two things in mind. You're thinking, if I get to the shop and orange is sold at 100 naira or more than 100, okay, so if it is sold at 100 naira, I'll buy orange. If it is more than 100 naira, then I will buy something else. So when you get to the shop and orange is actually sold at 100 naira, you get orange. Then if it is sold at 150, you get something else. So in JavaScript too, we have conditions for some things that we do, some expressions, some tags, and some things like that. Okay, so we'll be looking at that in this session. Then for JavaScript conditional statement, we use if or else statement to execute a block of code if a specified condition is true. And if the condition is false, then you execute another code. Okay, then we also have a switch statement, also used for conditional statement as well. We are going to see how we can use all these statements. So let me share my screen and then we'll practice how to do this. So I believe everyone can see my screen. Okay. So here is my VS Code, and then my VS Code, as usual, I'll create a folder for my project. Okay, I already have a folder created. So inside that folder, I will have my JavaScript script folder created inside this. Okay, inside the project folder. So I have my script. Then I'll also need my CSS or polystyle folder. Then I'll need my index.html to display whatever I want to display on the browser. So I'll need index.html file. Okay. Then I'll also put up my HTML structure. Then in my scripts folder, I'll create a file for my JavaScript. So I'll call that file scripts.js. Then I'll also have a style file. I'll call that, it's going to be inside my style. I'll call that style.css. All right. So having created this, I'll have to link up my CSS and my script. So my script goes to the body section. So I'll have my script here on the body section. Then the source, that is the location where my script is saved, and it's inside script slash script.js. Then on my head section, on the head section, I will have my CSS linked to HTML page. Though we will not be using much styling in this training. So I will have my style first. Okay, so this is correct. Right. Then for my title, I'll change my title to JavaScript conditional statement. So for the conditional statement, the if-else statement, you have to create a statement, you have this structure, okay? The if, and then the condition you're trying to create. Sorry. You have the if, and then you have the expression in here, and then you have your statements in here, or you can call it the condition. Okay, so this is the structure you'll be using. The if inside a bracket, and then the expression or the if statements. Sorry, if statements here. It should be statements. And then the code that you want it to run. Okay, so this is how it's going to look like. So you have the if statements, the if, and then in brackets you have the statement, and then you have the code that you want that if statement to run, and then you can execute it with either console log or whatever way you want to execute it with. Okay. So let's look at some of these, some of the code you can execute with the if statement. Okay, so let's assume you want to do something like this. Let me comment this. Okay, you have a variable. Let's say you have a variable using let. You have a variable number, and the number is equals to 10. Okay, and then you want to check. You want to output something that if there is a number that is less than 10 or that is greater than 10, then output this particular thing. So this is what you do. You have your if, then in brackets you have let's say we want to output something when a number is less than 10. So you can do something like this. Number, so that is 10 less than, sorry, we have 10. So let's say we have 0. Let's output a number from 0 to number greater than 10 or number less than 10. Either the number is less than 10, then we run this code, this section. Let's console.log this. Console.log number is less than 10. Okay, then in your console, you can check the outcome. Let's see what we have here. So since we've linked this page to our HTML page, you can just open this on the browser. And then inspect elements, then go to console. Okay. Oh, they're not finishing on the console. Okay, so we have number is less than 10. Why? Because the expression we have here says so. So if a number is less than 10, then write this out. Then we have else statement, we have if else statement. So you can have multiple if statement inside one code, one expression. Okay, you can have multiple if statement inside one expression. So let's say if the number is less than 10 and we want to execute this, and then if a number is equals to 10, or if a number is greater than 10, you execute another code. Or if the number is not greater than 10 and is not even less than 10, you can execute another line of code. So we'll see how to go about that. And I want to believe that we were taught how to use the arithmetic operations, that is the equals sign, the strictly equality, less than, greater than, and all that. So I don't want to go back to that again. I just want to continue with the if statement. So let's say we have a function. We have a function here. Let me comment this. So we have a function. I'll just use any random name for this function. I'll call that my function. And then within this code, I have I want to get the time. Okay. So let's see how we can get to this time using the time method. So getting time, you use new date. So note this, you use new date and then you can get the hour depending on what you want. You can get the hour, you can get the minute, you can get, if you just use new dates, you're getting the whole time, minutes, hour, and even today's date. So I just want to get the hour. So in this, this is my variable I've created. So the expression, what I want to output is if the time is less than 8, then or 20, output good day. And if it is greater than 20, then output good evening. So let's see how we can go about that. So let's say we have another variable here to output our results. We have, let's say, greetings. So this is what the function is doing. It's actually going to output a greetings. So let's say if time, if our time is less than 20, so what are we trying to display? We are trying to display good evening. So let's console log or let's output greetings here. Greetings equals to good day. This is just like saying, assigning a value to this variable. So we are trying to use the conditional statement to assign a value to the greetings variable. Okay, so if the time is less than 20, then in this variable assign good day to it. But if it is not less than 20, then execute another block of or another code. Let's say else the greetings will become good evening. Okay. So this is like the day is like from morning till 8 p.m. and then the else statement from that time from 8 to down till maybe the next day. So let's console log this. So the console log is still going to be within the function or outside the if statement. So it's not going to be part of the if statement. So let's console log the greetings and see what we get. Can actually console log greetings inside the if statement, but then that would mean repetition of code, and we don't want that. So let's console log that and then see what we have on the browser. I hope this works. Okay. That did not work. So, and we don't have any error on the console. So what could be the issue here? Okay. Remember while doing your function in your previous class, we were told that to execute a function, you have to call that function, and we didn't do that. So to execute this function, we have to call it. This is how you call your function. So if we check now on our browser, sorry, can you guys see my browser? Oh, okay. I didn't show my browser. Sorry about that. Can everyone see my browser? All right. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I think I'll just need to go back to the first line of if statement I started with. I didn't know I did not show my browser. So let me just comment this. So for this if statement where we had number, a variable number which is equals to 10 here, and then on the if condition, we wanted to execute this code that number is less than 10. So in our expression here, in our if expression, we have 0 is less than 10. If it is less than 10, then just execute this. Okay. So we go to our browser and check on the console if that was actually true. If it is true, then it will execute that. Let's see. Okay, so we have this code, number is less than 10. Why? Because our expression, the if statement here is actually true. It's true that 0 is less than 10. Okay. So I don't know if you get that, or if you have any question, you can ask. If you have any question, you can raise your hand and ask a question. Okay, I think someone's hand is up. Sophia.
Yeah, good morning, Miss Promise.
Good morning.
Okay, so I'm totally lost on this first example, the let number equal 10. Yes, that's. Then you said if 0 is less than 10. I am confused. Then you said console.log number is less than 10. That console.log number is less than 10 is what is displaying. And it looks like that is what it's been programmed to display. I was thinking we are comparing like let number equal to 10. So if number is less than 10,
You have
I don't
to,
know, maybe
right?
confused about that example.
Okay, so sorry about that. Okay. So maybe I will have to use true here. That number is less than 10, then console log true.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you're saying if 0, it shouldn't it be if number is less than 10? That's my confusion.
Oh, okay. I made a mistake here, sorry. You should use number here. Number is actually 10, okay? So if 0 is less than number, which is 10, it's just like having this 10 inside here. So actually assigned a variable to 10, okay? So I see where you're confused. Actually assigned a variable number, which is 10, and then inside my if block, I should have used the number, that is the variable I actually assigned to it, instead of using 10, okay? So it's the same as saying 0 is less than 10. Then instead of using the number 10, I use the variable I assigned. So it's just 10.
Okay.
There's no difference to it. But if I
Okay.
don't use this variable, I can just attach 10 here. It's the same.
Okay.
Okay. So actually, 0 is less than 10. So this is true that 0 is less than 10. It will output this. Okay. Then if you have a value that probably you have a variable, you have the let variable, which is number is 10, okay, and then that is the number variable rather, which is 10, and then you have if the expression if 0 is less than the number, that is 10, execute this, else if else then execute another line of code. So you can have another thing here. Let's say you can have 3 here. It still work, okay? Then if let's say if 0 is still less than 3. Well, as we progress, we will still see how we can use conditional statement like if, else, and all that to compare some variables that we have. But for now, just know that you can actually assign a variable and check if a particular thing is less than that variable or not, okay? Do you understand?
Yeah, I do. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So it actually depends on what you want to achieve. So we can have a 0 is less than 10 or something. Just that. Okay. So I will comment that so it won't interfere in our code. And then uncomment this section. So this is a function. I just choose to use this function. Then I have my local variable inside this function. So this variable, it's only going to work within the function. If I put it out there, I can have another function and then use the variable. If I have this function outside here, I can actually use another variable and still call this. I can use another function and call this variable inside that function. But what I want to do now is putting it inside, so it will be a local variable and not global variable. So I have a variable called time, and then assigned a get time to it, to that variable. And then I want to output greetings, good day, if the time is less than 20. And if it is less than 20, then I want to output good day. Else, that else is if it is something else, maybe is greater than 20 or equals to 20, then I want to output good evening. Okay. So let's see what we have in console. Is this true? So time is less than 20 and is outputting good evening. Let's check what is in time. believe you are following this. Let's check what we have in time. So be sure. Oh, time is undefined. Why? Oh, okay. I missed something here. So this should have this bracket. Get ours and not get our. So let's see what we have in time. Okay, so we actually missed something. So that time now is 9, and it's true that it's actually 9 a.m., 9:35 a.m. So we needed the hour. So we output good day, which is morning. Okay, so if our time now is less than or greater than or equals to 20, we will output some good evening. So let's assume I change this expression to greater than. Then on our console, we'll have good evening. So this expression works according to what you set it to. I don't know if, yeah, it works according to what you set it to, and depending on what you want to use it for. Okay, so if you have any question, you can raise your hand and ask your question. Okay, Timileyin, please, your hand is off.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, sorry, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm just coming now. There's something I don't understand here. Like when you initialize the function, you say let's time equal to new date, then dot get hour. Then you said let's greeting. This let's greeting you did. Like, what does it mean? What is greeting?
Okay, greetings is an empty variable I assigned to is actually an empty variable. So I want to assign something to that variable. Okay, so in my if block, you have greetings equals to good day. Okay, so instead of actually using let greetings equals to good day, I will remove this, and I will still have another one here. So I just want to use these greetings for all the statement in this if block. Okay, so you can actually assign an empty variable, and then with that empty variable you can assign a conditional statement to it. So like if time is less than 20, then good day will be the greetings, that this variable will now become good day. Then if it is greater than or equals to 20, that is if it is not less than 20, then the greetings variable will now become good morning. So it's just like me assigning good day to this variable and equally assigning good evening to this greetings variable. You can create empty variables and assign values to it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right. So here with that, I can actually console log the greetings, and depending on the conditional statement, it will just pick a particular value that has to do with that conditional statement and assign a value to the greetings. Okay. Right. So we'll just continue with more if statements and see how we can practically go about it. Then another one I would like to look at now is if you have a form. Let me assume you have a form. Okay, you have an input tag. in my HTML, I'm going to create an input tag. Let's say I have input here. Okay, and it's a text type with the name of first name and with an ID of first name. Okay. Then I have my button, that is a submit button. My button here will be submit, or let me just say click me. Click me. And then ID, I want to assign an ID to this button. I'll have something like let's say click me. Okay, then I want to have I want to pop up a message with JavaScript. If this button is clicked, I want to output a message. Okay, so I'll just give this an ID of message. Yeah, message is fine. Okay, so having put up this in my script file, let me comment this. You can always refer back to this later. Then in my script file, I have another function. I'll create another function. In that function, I'll just call it, let's say check. Let me call it check number. So I'm trying to check a number that goes into that field, that input field. Okay. Then what I'm going to do now is getting the ID of this input. So the ID for that particular input is first name. So with my variable, I can pick the ID. I could select first name. You can just give it any name, mustn't be first name. And then use your documents dot query selector. The document dot query selector is actually what you use to select an item from the DOM. So your DOM is your HTML file, okay, your HTML page. So from here in JavaScript, to access this HTML tag or this particular HTML, you can use a document.query selector. You can use document.get ID. You can use document.tag name, depending on which you want to use or what you want to achieve. Okay. So for this one, I just want to select a particular element, which is this input here. So I want to use documents.query selector. With query selector, you can use ID, you can use class name, you can use class rather. So for the ID selector, I have my ID already as first name. So I will just indicate here. Remember, your ID has a hash and then the name of the ID. Okay. So this automatically selects this particular element. If you console log this, let's try and console log this. Console.log first name. And then we call our function. Then we'll see what we have. So you see we have the input tag displayed on the console. So you can always select item in your DOM that is in your HTML page using document.querySelector. But then if you are using document.getElements by ID, another way of selecting, this is like telling the script that you want to select an ID. So you don't need to specify the hash because this is already an ID. So just using the name shows that it's actually an ID and nothing else. But if you are using Queryselector, either or Queryselector, you have to specify what you want to select, either ID or a class. Okay. So assuming this was my my class, then with my queries, I can't use query get element by ID because that is a class. So I will either use let me remove this first. I will either use document dot get elements by class name. Okay, then I'll just assign the class name to it. That is first name, and it will work. Okay, but I want to use Queryselector. Okay. And then I will just assign the either class with a dot, or if it was an ID, I actually change it to class. If it is an ID, you now use the hash to indicate that it is an ID. Okay. So if I reload my page, I still have it here. Remember when I used the ID, I still had my input tag here in my console. So what we are trying to do now is getting the input from this input tag. When someone typed something here, when you type a particular thing here, you want to get what that person typed, and then even check if it is a number or if it is a number or a text. So we want to try that now. So I've already gotten my input tag. Then I want to get the value. That value is what someone has typed in that input tag, in my input tag. So I actually want to get the ID from the input tag. So I'll do queries, let variable doc is equals to document.querySelector. Then the name of the selector, that is the name of the input, the class name for the input with dots. If I'm using ID, I'll put an hash here, then the name of the ID, dot value. Okay, if I just leave it without the value, it's going to give me the whole input element. Okay, so I will have my conditional statement here. So if first name or can we check first for a number? Let's check for a number, or let's just check for anything that has been added to the input that has been put in there. So I'll just change that to fit into what we are trying to do. So input, it doesn't matter what variable, the name variable you use, but just to match with what we are doing, I'll change that. So if my input, that is what someone has typed in, is less than 1, or remember your or operator, or if what someone has typed in, that is the input, is greater than 10, okay, then what I want to show on my console console.log input is invalid. I want to display, I want to console log I want to console log good job. So let's check this. So if my input is less than 1, or if it is greater than 10, then console log input is invalid. So it shouldn't be less than 1 and it shouldn't be greater than 10. Okay. So if it is within that from 2 to 9, then console log good job. So let's see if our expression works fine. I'll just reload this. We are not even getting error, but I'm getting input. Okay. We assign value to this now. Okay, it's not actually working the way I want. Let's see what is the issue here. So we have a problem here. Okay, so first I want to clear this. Let's debug. Input is greater than 10. Then sorry, just I want to try and see what is causing the issue. It's not coming out the way we want. Good job. Okay. This is crazy. Well, maybe I should just give it a variable. Let me assign an empty variable to this. That can possibly be the issue. Then we still stick to the message will now become message, and message will now be input is not valid. And we also want to message good job if it is less than 10. So if input is greater than 10, then it should be invalid, else it should be good job. So let's console log message. And it's still showing. Okay. So we are having okay. Okay, let's console log input and see what we have inside the input. This is trying to play with us. When we commence this. Okay, so our input is actually empty. Okay, so I'm just trying to debug and see what we can get out from input. Okay. They're actually trying to output something that doesn't exist. So we have value equals to equals to. Okay, so we are getting the value. We are getting the value. Okay, one thing I want to note is that when only want to execute this function when this button is clicked. Okay, so I'll use a JavaScript on click events on click listener. Okay, so I only want to execute this when this button is actually clicked. So I do not just want to execute it when the page load up. So I think that is where our problem is coming from. So let's see. Let me return this back to my local variable. Okay, then I'll just output console log the input and see what we have. So if I type something and then click on it, okay, so we have the output here. I type another thing and we click, we have this. Then I also type P and I click, I have it here. So with that, we can manipulate if statements. So with this, we can actually manipulate if statements. So the expression was that when the input, that is the value of the input tag, is actually less than is less than 1, or the input is greater than 10, then output input is not valid, else good job. So we are going to console log this. Okay, console log the message. So when we click on the button, it will actually output the expected result. Let me check what we have. So there's nothing on the console right now, but I'll just try out something here. So it's not valid. Then if I try out let's say 5, so I have good job. Okay, so why I'm having that, I'm having this, it's because of the expression I made, because of the if statement. So I actually want to output invalid if the expression is either less than 1. So from a negative number to 1, it will be invalid. Then from 10 up, it will be invalid. But any number from 2 to 9 will be valid. So it's just like saying you have passed the test, good job. Okay. So that is another way we can output, we can use conditional statement. We have so many ways. It's not just putting it on the console. You can output the text, that is the message, either error message or success message on your page. Let us try that with JavaScript. So what we'll do now is taking the particular section where we want to output that, and it's going to be inside a paragraph tag, a p tag. Then for the p tag, I gave it an ID of message, so it will actually output it. So I will just use error message here so that it will not conflict with the other message variable we had. So let me say I use error message here. So I will create a variable for this message. Is equals to document dot query selector. And then we have the selector. That selector was an ID. So I will have that here. And okay. So if we actually want to output this on the we want to output this using the p tag. So what we are going to have instead of the console, okay, so instead of the console, we now have documents or error message dot inner HTML. So inner HTML is actually used to display your contents on the browser, or you can use text text content to display since it shows a text, or I'll prefer using inner HTML. Then what we are going to display is this message. So let us see, let me check this out and see if it will give us the expected result. So I'll just reload this, and we have input is not valid. And if we try to input something, good job. If we try to input something that is a number more than 10, we'll have input is not valid. So with this, we'll see how we can actually manipulate the HTML document. So take notes, and as you learn how to do some manipulations, because we'll be doing that a lot in most of our projects from now on. Then I also mentioned the if-else statement. So we can also add a conditional statement, more than one conditional statement for a particular block of code. So let's see how we can do that. I want to quickly comment this. Before we go into that multiple if statement, does anybody have a question? Okay, and Timileyin, your hand is up. Ask your question.
All right, yeah. Sorry, there was something you did that I didn't quite get. Like that on click, is it an attribute? Like where did you do it in the index of HTML?
Okay, it's actually an event in JavaScript. So we have on click events, we have on submit, we have a lot of them. Okay, we can actually do this with JavaScript, but this is just a basic way of actually using on click. It's a JavaScript event listener.
All right. So if you want to submit now, like submit the form, instead of .add event listener, you just use .on submit or what?
If you are submitting a form, you can use on submit, but that is going to be on the, if you are going through this method, it's going to be on the form tag itself. But as we progress, we will learn the different ways of using all these event listeners.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. So Orife, you can speak up. Are you there?
Hello, did you call on me, please?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, sorry, my network was poor, so I didn't hear you. Okay, so my question is, when you selected the ID on the JavaScript page
Okay.
at the beginning for the JavaScript page, yes. Okay, so for line 32, you use them dot first name and dot to signify class, and there was a time you used the hash symbol for the ID. My question is, when you're bringing the selector, the class or the ID name to JavaScript, do you need to use the dot and the hash? Because I think I did not use that, and it's still worked. So I want to find out. Although I used
if you actually
select
listen
by name or something. Okay.
if you actually listen when I was selecting that, when I was talking about that, I said depends on what you want to do. Okay. If you are using Queryselector, you have to specify what type of selector, either a class or an ID. But if, for instance, you are using get elements by ID, it's automatically an ID. So you don't need to select it. But what you need to note is that your tag, that particular tag must be an ID. If not, it will not
Okay.
work. Then you can use get elements by class name, and you have to be sure that in your HTML tag is also a class. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Yes. Thank you.
But with Queryselector, you have to specify whether a class or an ID.
Okay. But if it's a tag, can Queryselector still work so you don't put anything?
If it's what?
If it's a tag.
Okay. Yeah, Queryselector, you just remove and just give it a tag name. So let me say
Okay.
it's an input tag. So you just have input there.
Okay.
Then someone is asking why I use dot value. If you notice when I console log the input, I actually get the tag, the whole element. So I didn't want the whole element. What I wanted was just the value from the tag. So I wanted to get what someone is typing out, is typing in here. So that is called a value. That is why I added dot value to it. I did not just want to get the HTML element, but just a value from the input tag, from the input. I believe that is clear. Then Keluke.
Good morning. Yeah,
Good morning.
it's
Sorry, am I
Kenkeluke.
pronounced
Yeah,
right?
yeah, fine. It's Kenkeluke. Yeah, I wanted to ask about inner HTML. What exactly is it? And like, can you explain a little better on how to use it? Because here we're using error message dot inner HTML equals message. I did not get the part of inner HTML.
Okay, so I was trying to output a message from JavaScript to my browser. Okay, so you can use dot inner HTML. It's actually a JavaScript, should I call it? Yeah, it's just a JavaScript code that you use to output a text from JavaScript to your browser. Okay, so it's either you use, if you are using text content, you have just the text content, but within HTML you can output a section of or a block of code to your browser. So I actually wanted to output this message to my browser. Remember, I used console log most, but I didn't want to go by console log. I just wanted to output something here. So output the value I'm getting from here on my browser. So you see this good job. That's inner HTML actually does that. So to do that, I created a tag and then gave it an ID. Then with that ID, I selected the ID and then now tell JavaScript that attach this message to that ID. So doing that, I use inner HTML to attach message to the p tag.
Okay,
You get
thank
that?
you. Yeah, I did. I got it. Thanks.
Yeah, you can actually, Victor, you can actually output message with, you can actually use JavaScript to change the color of messages. Yes, you can do that using the style, and then the name of the style. We will look into that. Okay. But for now, let us continue with the multiple if statement. So for the multiple if statements, I will equally have another function. Or instead of using a function, I will have to use the console log for this. So checking, I'll have a prompt. I'll have a prompt. we have a prompt, and then I want to command users. I want to command users to enter a number. Okay. So I am actually instructing users to enter a number. So while typing the number, I will use my conditional statement. I'll use a conditional statement to tell the users, or actually get some information from the user. So if the number is less than 0, then I want to console log. The number is positive. Okay, sorry, if it is greater than 0, I want to console log the number is positive. Okay, but if the number okay, with the multiple if statement, you need your else if. Okay, so if the number is equals to 0, let me use double equal, is equals to 0, then I want to console log. I want to console log the number is 0. Else, if it doesn't fall among here, then just console log. Else, I want to console log the number is negative. It's a negative number. Okay. Yeah, so let us look at our console and see what we have. So our prompt is popping up already. I want to reload this and then enter a number. I'll just enter a number here. And I have the number is positive. If I reload this again and the prompt comes up, then I enter 0. I'll check my console to see the output of that. The number is 0. And if I enter something that is negative, just tell me that it's telling me that the number is a negative number. So that is how you can use your multiple conditional statement with if block, and if then your statement, then the else if, then the statement, and then the else. That is, if the first statement is not true, then run the second statement. If the second statement is not true, then just console log the last expression. So the else statement is just like it's just there to back you up if your expression is not true. Okay. So what if it's actually not a number? If it's a string you output, you can also have okay, we'll look at that. But before we look at that, we want to create a form. I want to create a form. Let me comment this other form, this form. Then create an HTML form. Okay, I don't need this function yet. Or before creating a form, let's say I have a function. Okay. Before creating a form, let's say I have a function. I want to actually change the color of the text, and then I also want to check if a particular number is if a particular condition is not true. So let's still use the old form we had. I'll leave this for now. We'll get back to that. So let me still use this to check. So in that particular function, this function, I'll just comment this. Okay. And then in there, if let's say if my input is equals to, I'll first check if my input is equals to, is empty, I will use strict equality here. Is actually empty, okay? Or if it is, sorry, it's my keyboard that is misbehaving. If it's not a number, that is none, that is not a number. That input, if that input is not a number, then I want to output some, I want to console log, or I want to send a message that the input a number. So here it automatically turns to else if okay, so the next one is if my input here, what I want to input there is a number, is that nothing is there, then you input, try to add a number. That is like a command to the screen. Then if it's not a number, if you actually input something and it's not a number, then I will equally tell you to input a number. Then if you input a number and the number is less than 1, or the number is greater than 10, then I will tell you that it's not valid. Then if it falls between 2 to 9, then it's valid. So let's see what this gives us. So this is actually where we want to output it. I'll clear my console. I'll just remove my console. We don't need my console for now. So let me see, I have this. So it's now telling me to input a number. Okay. Then if I add an empty string, nothing is there, it's still telling me to input something. If I add a string, it's telling me to input a number. And if I have 1000 here, it's telling me that the input is not valid. So if I have 5, it will not tell me that good job, that it's passed. Okay. Then you can have another, you can actually change the color of that text you are outputting. So to change the color for the text, I want to actually change the p tag. So the p tag here is the error message. Remember, the p tag I want to change, hello, can everyone hear me? I think I lost connection for a while.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so I want to change the text color for that particular tag for the message. So I will now have error message just before I open my message. Dot style dot color, dot color is equals to, in quotes, either you use double quote or single quote, it works fine. Then assuming I want to use the red color there, so my text will change to red. Okay, good job. But another thing you also need to note is you can equally use conditional statement to output different colors for this message, for this your p tag, for the message that comes up. So if it's actually good job, you can change it to success and the rest using conditional statement. So that is just how it works. So let's move on to creating a form and trying to validate a form using JavaScript. So I'll create a form here. I don't need this. And in the form, I'll have my input tag. I'll have my input. Okay, with text, and then I'll also have an ID here. So I can use it to select. I'll have a first name ID. Then I'll have my name as first name. Okay. Then I will not forget my label. So label for first name, and then this is going to have the first name. Okay. So let me just duplicate all this for the next one. Then I don't want to go into styling this much. So I'll just use separate here. Just break this down. And this one will be last name. Then I'll have here as last name. And next one is going to be, the ID is going to be last. And the name too is going to be last name. Then I will have a field for email. Change the type to email. And I'll also change this to email. And this also. Okay. Then, okay, I'll also change this to email. Okay, I think that will be enough. So we'll just have a button. We'll have a break. Then we'll have a button here. So the button will have the submit as the value. So the type is also going to be submit, and you can choose to have a value here, which is submit. Okay, so let me see. Let me see what we have on the screen. Okay, so this is what we have. This is not really looking nice. Well, when you are doing your own, you can style it and make it look nice. Today, we don't want to focus on styling. So I will break that down here. All right. Let me just comment the first template we had. Okay. All right, so this is what we have. You see, this is going to submit. So by reloading the page shows that it's actually submitting, but will not set it the way it's going to submit to. So in our JavaScript, in our script section, we actually want to get the value from each of those input fields and check if there is anyone that a person has missed a value or not. So let us get all the input field here. So the first input field, it has an ID of F name. So we'll get that first. So when we get to here, we'll have let me just put a comment here so we won't get confused. This is for form validation, with JavaScript. Okay. Okay, so that's fine. So the first thing we'll do is creating a variable for our first name. I will use Queryselector. And we have this thing here. So that was an ID. So we just use a dash and hash here. But you can have dot value, or we'll just use the dot value later. Then we can also select the last name. So we have the last name also had an ID of last name. Let me be sure of that. So yeah, we have an ID of last name. And the next one, which is the email, we also select that, and we have email equals to document dot query selector email. Okay. Okay, so having done that, we want to output an error message. Here, if I want to output an error message on top, so I'll create a tag for that particular error message. And it's going to have an ID of message. You can call this whatever you want. I just choose to call it message. So we also need to get that tag here using message equals to document dot query selector message. Okay. So when we get that, we get the form. I want to get the whole form so that when we are submitting the form, we can actually add all these changes when we are submitting a form. So let's get the form. Document dot query selector. I'll just pick the form tag. So this is like saying I need the whole form here. Okay. So I can decide to give this form an ID, but I don't want to. I want to select tag itself. So just select the ID. Then for the form, I want to add an event listener. Remember when we had the on-click event for this input? I want to use JavaScript to add an event listener to the form. So when the form is submitted, you can actually perform a particular function. Okay. So before we create a function, we'll have a callback function. Before we create a function, I will just pick the form tag using that is the form tag. So I'll just pick the form tag and then add event listener to it. So that event listener, it can be on click, it can be on submit, it can be on blow, on mouse over and all that. But this action is actually going to happen when a user submits the form. So this is how you add your event listener. And then you have a function in here. I will use this as a callback function. A callback function is a function that you can actually create a function in here, but I don't want to create a function in here. I want to create a function outside the form, but then I want to attach that function inside this form. So you have your form validation. This is just a function name. Okay, so that is how you can call a function inside the add events listener. And you can decide to use this and just leave it. And then since you have this is a function name, you have to create that function. So using your function keyword, you just create this. Okay. And with the conditional statements, but before this, you notice that when you are submitting your form, when you click on submit, if you actually add anything to this form, you click on submit, it will load the page and everything you submitted is gone. So I want to stop that from happening. So what I will do is adding a prevent default method in JavaScript. So I'll use this and then adding a value to that function, I will just prevent the default submission. Prevent default. So just with this, just with that, the form will not reload. So even if I add contents, I add something, it doesn't reload the page. Okay. So with that, we can actually see our error. So let's have our if statement here. So what are we going to do in the if statement? We want to actually check for the first name, the value for the first name. If the person have added value to the first name, so we have the value here. This first name dot value is just like saying value here, and then having just, if you add your value there, you are going to have just first name here. Okay, so I'll prefer using that dot value here. There are so many ways you can achieve a particular thing. Okay, so I want to check if that first name is empty. I also want to check if my last name, the value, that is the value of my last name, is also empty. And I also want to check if my email is empty. Okay, then if it is empty, then message dot inner HTML will now be input cannot be blank. Okay, so this is what we have. If my value, the first value is empty, the last name value is empty, and the email is empty, then we want to output a message, input cannot be blank. The E here is just a value I added to the function, and using that value, I prevent the default submission using the events object. So this is like a value added to the function. So let us check as submission here. Okay. So you see inputs cannot be blank, and I want to add a color to that input. So the message does style color should equal red. And let's see what this gives us. Okay, so inputs cannot be blank. And if you try to add a value, okay, it doesn't work because we've not set condition for that. So else, let us change the condition if a person actually fill in all the information. Maybe I should just alert this and alert the user that the submission was successful. Form submission. Form submitted successfully. Okay. Okay. So we have the message, and then when we submit, we have form submitted successfully. So that's it. But when you also notice that if you are submitting it, this message doesn't go away. There is another thing you can do to make this message go away, but maybe you look at that later using your timeout, set timeout. Okay. So you can make that message go away. But then if you want to display this message, if you want to change the message for when someone submits successfully, you can equally change the message here. And we have, let's say green here. And then the input, the value, the message that you'll be displayed will be form submitted successfully. So let me see what this gives us. Okay, so you see it changes, and if I reload this and I try to submit, it equally changed, and that is it. So I don't know if anybody have a question concerning this form submission. Does anyone have question? If you have question, you are free to raise your hand and ask your question. If you have any question concerning the if else statements, if and else if statements, you ask because you are moving to switch now. Okay, you can equally drop your question on the chat box and someone, the mentor, will respond to you. Okay, I'm seeing someone's hand up. Chidioku.
Sorry, there is something you used earlier. It's not alert on the other one that also made a pop-up. What's the difference between that and this one? Or is it because you use this one inside the JavaScript file?
No. Alert, a prompt is like a command for someone to input something. Alert is like an instruction that okay, this thing is this, so maybe your form has been successfully submitted. For a prompt, you notice there is a place where you can input something. Okay, so
Yes.
the difference is that with prompt, you are actually requesting for something from a user.
Okay.
But with alerts, you are not requesting, you are actually giving feedback.
Okay.
Yes. Right. So let's look at, I believe no one has question concerning the if statement. We want to look at the switch statement. Switch is more like the if statement, but with switch, you can also use to manipulate multiple conditional statements. Okay. So let us see the syntax for switch statement. So whenever you are using switch statements, you're trying to, I will just create a file for the switch. So let's not mix it up with the if statement. I'll call this switch .js. So you're trying to execute, use switch to select one of many blocks of code to be executed. You have so many blocks of code. Switch can be very good with it. Instead of using if statement, if else, and then another if else, and then you continue if else, you can use switch to actually check for a conditional statement. So I will need to comment this. So we focus on this other file now, the switch file. So that means I will have to attach my switch script, then we have scripts /switch. All right. So for the syntax for switch, I'll just copy the syntax and paste. I'll just copy it somewhere and then paste it here. Okay. So for the switch, you have the variable or the expression. The variable can be outside, or you can equally add the variable here. And then you have the case, then you have the value, and then the body of your case, that is your statement. Then you can have another case value, then the body of the case value too. Then you can have another case value, and then you have a break. So if this case value is true, then you stop running the switch. Else, if it is not true, you continue and check the case value 2. If the case value 2 is true, then stop the switch. Then if the case value 2 is not true, you can go to the next case value and check if that condition is true. And if it is not true, just stop. If none of this condition is true, then the default statement will run. Okay, so the default statement is just like the else statement. It runs when none of these conditions is true. So let's see an example of how we can use a switch, statement. Okay, so let's assume we have a variable called we call a with a value of 2. Okay, and then we have a switch. We want to check the value for the variable a. Okay, So this is the variable A here, and we want to check if the value is 2. So the first case, which could act like our if statement, is 1. Okay, and we have the colon. So take note, after your case, you have your colon. Then you now have your the body of the case, which is what you want to express. So let's say here in the first case, A is actually equals to 1. Is that true? We'll find out. Then if it is true, just break. So stop the code from running. If it is not true, then check the next case. And so we have case 2. Then A is equals to 2. If this is true, then stop the code from running. Okay, if it is not true, then go ahead and check the next one, case 3. A is equals to 3. Oh. Then if it's true, then just stop. If it is not true, if none of this condition is true, then we have our default statement. A sorry, this is break. A is equals to not found, and then we just stop. Then we break. So we can now console log A. Or we could just say something like using the backticks. We could have something like value is sorry about this, my keyboard is acting weird. Okay, so we could have something like the value is, then the name of the case. So let's check what we have on the console. I'll reload my page and go to my console. The value is 2. Okay. So is that true? Yes, it's true, because A is equals to 2. So the first case is saying that A is 2. So if A is 2, then output 2. Then if A is 3, then output 3. So it actually checked the first one and it noticed that A is not 1. So it left that and go to the next one and check if A is 2. If it is 2, it output that. So that is why we are having this value. The value is 2. If we actually change this to, let me change this to 5, and let's check what the value is. So the value is not found because none of this break statement has the value in it. Okay. So that is another conditional statement you can use in JavaScript. And I don't know if anybody have a question on this section. Another thing too, before asking question, you can have multiple switch statements in JavaScript as well. Okay, so let me assume you are checking for an apple. You are checking for a fruit, and the fruit, let's say the fruit is an apple. Okay, and then we have a switch. We just call this, the switch is actually a fruit. So we are checking if there is apple here. Then we are also checking mango. We'll check all these are fruits, so we'll check pineapple, and we'll also check. Okay, so if there is any fruit, any apple fruit among these, we want to console log. The name of the fruit. Let me use the backtick so we can now put a variable. So I want to actually output the name of the fruit. That is a fruit, and I would say is a fruit because it's actually a fruit. Then if it checks and there is nothing like apple among this case, then just by default we'll have let's break this. So by default, if there is no apple, then we'll just console log the fruit, and then we'll say it's not a fruit. Then we break. Okay, so the fruit name is apple. Okay, so we are checking if this is actually a fruit, if this apple is a fruit. If that is, if the apple is among the first case, so it's actually checking if it's a fruit, and we have it on the first case. So if it is a fruit, then we output the fruit name, which could be apple, is a fruit. But if it is not a fruit, then we output that name is not a fruit. So let's see what we have on the console. I'll comment this. So we have apple is a fruit. Okay. If I change this to maybe, if I use mango, we'll still have it as a fruit. If I use pineapple, we'll still have it as a fruit. That is, pineapple is a fruit. If I change this to, let's say, book, so we'll have it that book is not a fruit. And it's true that book is not a fruit. So let me return it to a fruit since it's a fruit. So I don't know if anybody have a question, because we'll be ending the conditional statement class for today. If you have a question, you can raise your hand and ask. All right, so I assume we are clear on this. Okay, so I want to thank everyone for joining the class today. If you have question, you can actually ask your question. Raise your hand and ask, because we'll be rounding this up. Okay, Chidogo, I see your hand up. What's your question?
Sorry, but I don't understand this last part. This repeated cases like case apple, is that where you're stating the content of the fruit?
Yes, actually, we are setting the content of the fruit here. We are trying to check for multiple fruits or multiple content here. So if, let's say we have a fruit which is equals to apple, and we know fruit here is actually apple. So we, in our switch statement, we have the switch, and then one of the switch case, apple is among these. Okay, so it's like saying if this fruit is an apple, then console log this, else console log this. But in a variable fruit, we actually assign the value apple to it. So in our switch, it checks if there is any case with apple. If it doesn't see, it will check if there is, if it doesn't see, but it's actually there on the first case, so it will just console log this. If we had mango here, it will check the first one, which is apple, and it assumes that it's not a fruit. It goes to the next one and check for this particular variable, fruit value, for this particular value. Then it will console log the value. Okay.
All right.
Okay. So if it doesn't have the value, it will just break. I mean, it will just console log the default statement.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Hi,
Ajidabo, yeah.
Hello.
Sorry. Ajidabo, Ajibade, ask your question first before.
All right, thank you very much.
Sorry, hold on. If you want to ask question, you can just raise your hand. So instead of interrupting someone, I'll call on you. Okay, continue.
All right, thank you very much. I want to ask specifically, what is the switch statement meant for? I can see here from the examples you have given us that you are changing fruit from apple to mango to pineapple. In real life, what exactly can we apply this to? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, in real life, for the switch statement, it's like your if condition. Okay, so you are equally like checking if a particular thing is true or not. So before I started, I said an example of how you can go to a shop and you are trying to buy a mango. So assuming you have in mind of buying a mango, then you have 10 naira for the mango or 100 naira for the mango. So when you get there, you assume that if the mango is 10 naira, then I will buy a mango. If it is not 10 naira or 100 naira as you earlier planned, then you get another fruit. Okay. So in this case, we assume that your initial plan was to get an apple. Okay. So you now go to the shop. If you see an apple, you buy. Okay, an apple fruit you buy. So in our case, we go to the shop and we are seeing an apple. So we buy the apple. So let's assume we just console log and say buy apple. Buy apple. Okay. So if our initial plan was to buy mango, we go to the shop, we see mango, we buy mango. If our initial plan was to buy pineapple, we go to the shop, we see a pineapple, then we buy. But if the plan we go failed, we plan to buy mango, but we not see mango. We plan to buy apple, we not see apple. We plan to buy pineapple, we not see pineapple. Then let us just buy anything we see in the shop. So that's where the default comes in. Just buy anything. Do you get that?
All right. Thank you very much.
So instead of the if statement, you can actually use a switch. It works the same.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. So does any other person have a question? Okay. Horrific.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask, okay, so the default, you mentioned the other time as a comment.
Your network is really bad. I can't hear you clearly.
How about now? Is it better now?
Yeah, better.
Okay, I'm sorry. The okay, so I was talking about break. You said break means the code stops running. So I would like to ask, at the default, which is the last should I say statement now? Since it is the last thing, which is default, break, what's break doing there? Like, do we still need to break out of something since it's the default?
Well, it's not compulsory that you use it here. You
Okay,
can choose to add it, you can leave it. I just choose to add it.
okay, ma. Then another thing, my console.log is actually giving me the results. Apple is a fruit and the other one, the value of 2, but it's giving me other things and I really don't understand them. Do I talk to you later? Okay, so it's giving me something saying executing DR scripts.
Okay, maybe we'll look at that later.
Okay.
So you just share the screenshots on the channel.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so does any other person have a question? All right, thank you all for joining. So this is where we'll be ending our class. Okay. Over to you.